Yeah, today we're going to be looking at the Canadian University overview. So I'm going to just go through a few things. Some slides are similar to the ones that we've seen in previous university systems, because I think it's important to get our minds in the right kind of frame of mind even. So if I go about the journey of this presentation, the first part is obviously just establishing the university application team, because it is a team effort, as we've spoken about before. It's really, really important that that we have all of the stakeholders involved in the conversations, and making sure that that decision isn't just one person doing it or one kind of member driving it. It has to be a team effort, because there's so many different factors to consider. And we want to make sure that you kind of consider as many of those as possible, and kind of prioritize the ones that are most relevant to you. So obviously the student is really important, the family and the friends and parents. There's a wealth of experience, I'm sure, for everyone to kind of gain from in terms of other relations or relatives who've been in different university systems. Teachers, obviously, they have a wealth of experience in their subject areas, but also in terms of university systems. So it's important to try and capitalize on that. The form tutor and the subject teachers, as I've said. Me, as head of sixth form, I'm very, very eager to kind of support in that journey. So please don't hesitate to ever reach out to me. And if there's anything I can do along the way, you know that I'm happy to do that. We have a careers advisor, Tracy Fleming, as well. She's eagerly available now. She's keen to have those sessions with students and kind of give them some guidance from her experience as well. Sometimes people go to outside agencies, which is fantastic as well. It can be fantastic. What's really important is that if you are using an outside agency, that you kind of connect them with us. It's important that we're all on the same page, and that we kind of work together just to make sure that vision or that aspiration is achieved at the end of it all. So yeah, building a successful university plan is essential. You want to work together, kind of take from everyone's opinions, take on board all of those thoughts, because even though you might have differing opinions, it's important to be able to justify whatever decision you make at the end of it. It is going to be a very stressful time next year, not just because of the exams for year 13, and actually even for year 12, the pressure of kind of Key Stage 5 is immense. But in the midst of that, or on top of that, being able to take the time to do that research and all of that is a stressful period. So having people around you is really important. We spoke about the family plan before. It is a family decision. You know, moving to a different country a lot of the time is daunting, and it has financial implications. So you want to make sure you've thought about those factors. We'll talk about the variables in the next slide. And as much research as possible. There isn't enough that you can do when it comes to this. It's a big decision. It's one of the biggest decisions that people are making. So even if you've got your heart set on one university system, it doesn't matter about researching others, just to kind of have a well-rounded set of kind of resources to help you find that end goal. And yeah, obviously work with that school team. We're happy to assist in any way. So yeah, there's lots of factors, as I've spoken about before. You want to make sure that you've prioritized the ones that are most relevant for you, because it'd be unmanageable to be able to kind of tick off every single box. I suppose location is one of the main factors. Thinking about Canadian universities, thinking about the types of universities in there, thinking about if you have support there, if you have family there, then it's useful to know that you have kind of that reassurance that if anything is a worry or a concern, you have people nearby. The climate is definitely something to consider over there as well. Also considering the non-academic goals, because university is not just about the subject that you're studying. It's also about finding out about yourself and growing and developing other aspects about you. So that's really important to consider. At the end of this all, we want to get our students to have successful careers. So employability is worth considering as well, really important, I suppose, in terms of what's the journey beyond university. Where are you going and where are you taking that? And if I just pick and choose a few other ones, thinking about the type of university in terms of their reputation, the style of teaching, whether there's the style of kind of resources and lectures and seminars and all of those things to consider. Obviously, finance is important as well, to make sure that it's something that's manageable and is worth the investment at the end of it all. So yeah, I could spend ages on this slide, but I won't. But it's important to touch on. So why study in Canada? So Canada is definitely something that is respected around the world. There are high academic standards and great quality in terms of making sure that those standards are upheld throughout the years. A degree from Canada is recognized all over the world. And you have equivalent credentials that will get you employability or job opportunities all over the world. Also, it's an exciting place in terms of the university. There is lots of differences between universities across the world. And in particular, in Canada, the lifestyle gives the well-rounded approach for students to kind of develop lots of different aspects. There's amazing sports facilities. There's lots of opportunities to kind of build on that culture and the aspect of art and music. There is lots and lots of opportunity for students to build that leadership and have a say and shape lots of the experiences that students have at university. And there's lots and lots of different opportunities following on from that in terms of industry. So there are another thing that is something that's growing, not just in Canada, actually. I've seen this when I was in university in the UK as well, is the opportunity to integrate some work. So for instance, if we're thinking about engineering, when I was at Warwick, there was definitely the opportunity for our engineers to do a year in industry. So in their third year, they'd go off and work for, say, for instance, if they're doing automotive engineering, they'd be able to work for a car company like Jaguar and gain that hands-on experience, which is absolutely invaluable when you're applying for jobs in the future. It is extremely competitive, and obviously the qualification that you have is one of the biggest factors. But alongside that, having the experience really separates successful candidates from unsuccessful ones. So there are many programs where you have that opportunity to kind of integrate some work in industry. It does lengthen the degree, but it is definitely worth the time, and often you get paid for it as well. And lots of universities have partnerships with various kind of firms and industry kind of companies to make that happen. So when you're doing your research, it's important to see if that's an opportunity that you'd like to pursue, or as an option that might be available later on. So why study in Canada? So obviously one of the biggest things is possibility of immigration. So if you're not a citizen in Canada, you might be eligible to be able to have a visa there to work on, and that's at least 2 years and a maximum of 3-year visa as a graduate. So there's a great opportunity there, and there's a link at the bottom which might be useful to look into if you are interested in that. Also, in terms of the lifestyle, it's reassuring to know that as a student there, you have various rights, and that's something to really keep in mind. We're very lucky being in Dubai that things are so well organized, and that we're in a safe environment. And different university systems or different countries have kind of different setups. And one of the big factors to consider when you're thinking about going to a different country is whether your son or daughter is going to be safe, whether they're going to be happy, where they're going to have their say in terms of what's right and wrong. And it's really nice to know that Canada rests upon lots of those fundamental rights, equality rights, and so on. So that's something to keep in mind and something to feel reassured about. It's a very multicultural society. I have lots of family out in Canada as well. And in my time at university, I've met lots of people from Canada, and they're very diverse. So there's lots of ethnic groups represented. Lots of great food, which is very important to me, of course, but it's reassuring to know that similar to Dubai, there's lots of different cuisines for whatever you're looking for, lots of activities and recreational things to do. And there's a lot of support in terms of international offices and student advisors. In the university itself, there's lots of clubs and associations similar to what you'd expect from university, and that's something that Canadian universities pride themselves on. I mentioned this before in terms of the rights that people have in Canada, but it's a very safe place. People are friendly, open-natured. It's something that has been ranked highly for years and years. And this is something that maybe I even reflected on when I was thinking about where I wanted to work. Dubai was one of the places, of course, but I was looking around the world, and often in my research, I even saw that Canada was something that, or a place that was great in terms of satisfaction, in terms of just in general well-being. And students and international students enjoy the same freedoms as citizens. So that's really nice to know. There's a big sense of equality, and it's a stable and peaceful society. So in terms of the context of Canada, it's a bilingual country. The main two languages are French and English, predominantly English. However, in Quebec, there are large populations of people who speak French, and a lot of the universities there also are French speaking. So before you commit to a university, it'd be worth kind of just making sure that the course that you're applying for is actually in English. So the education is province-based, so there are provinces in Canada, and the system, or the application system, is pretty consistent across the whole country. So there's a standard way of kind of applying, depending on the province, but there's kind of that general theme across all of them. The degrees, as I said, are equivalent to American university degrees, or even British ones. And they are increasing in terms of the number of international students. So it's great to know that we are there are loads of students going from all over the world, which makes it more exciting. There are two main different types of institutions: there's private and public. Main difference is that public institutions have funding from the government. Private institutions don't receive funding from the government, but they do have funding from maybe private organizations, from companies, or even that's reflected in the fees. So public institutions tend to be larger, more comprehensive, so they'll have a more kind of a wider range of courses on offer, and the tuition fees understandably can be lower because they have that subsidizing from the government. Private institutions are more specialized, so they might be more specific courses that you might be interested in, like medicine, but the fees can be higher, understandably so. And governments don't necessarily regulate those private schools, although they do have pretty high standards anyway. In terms of public universities, the undergraduate programs, the ones that students will go to generally from A levels or BTECs over into courses over there, they cover humanities, social sciences, applied sciences, and physical sciences, and I suppose they're available in most of the public universities. The more specific ones, like medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, law, architecture, engineering, journalism, they're not necessarily in all universities, because they are very specific in terms of the teaching, the experience that the students need to take or have along the way. So it's not necessarily available in every single one of those public universities. And the other thing to consider is that professional programs aren't always direct. It's not necessarily you do high school and then you go straight into a course that's more specialized. An example of that I can kind of marry up with the UK, like medicine is normally something that students go into straight from A levels and BTEC straight into medicine. However, sometimes you might do a degree in something like biomedical sciences, and then the postgrad would be the medicine. And in a similar way in Canada, you might do an undergraduate course in something and then specialize later into the course that you're aiming for. So it does depend on what you're interested in. So similar to lots of other systems, there are 3 levels. There's the bachelor's, which is generally 3 or 4 years. There's the master's, which is what tends to happen after the bachelor's, although you can sign up for the master's in one go. It would just be a longer course along the way. And then the doctoral, which is essentially 3 years of study, including a thesis, which is after the master's degree. So it's kind of one step at a time, depending on where you want to take your learning journey. There are also colleges, similar to what you might call community colleges in the US, that offer kind of bridging programs. So if say, for instance, you aren't necessarily ready to go straight into university, you might want to do a shorter period in a Canadian college to kind of get that qualification, that stepping stone to get you onto the course that you want to get into. The term college is also used within universities. So sometimes a university might have a breakout, which is, I suppose, the college part, for example, the St. Paul's College. So let me give you an example of what a degree looks like in the Canadian system, which is interesting because it's similar to the US system in lots of ways, and it varies from the UK system, where I suppose I mentioned this last week when I was talking about the US universities. When you choose a British degree, it's kind of you choose that subject and you have a set menu and you kind of follow that pathway. There is an element of choice, but it's very structured and it's very guided. Looking at a degree in a Canadian university, and this is an example from the U of T. Essentially, you have a lot of flexibility when you join on. You have to fill up 20 credits, and those 20 credits can be shaped in different ways depending on you, depending on where you want your degree to go, and I suppose the journey that you take over the first couple of years. So it's not necessarily the case that you need to decide at the start what you want to have your degree in. You want to have a good idea, essentially, but what you specialize in or what you major or major and minor in can be shaped along the way. So as I said, you need to earn about approximately 20 credits, and to complete those 20 credits, you do various courses along the way. Some courses are half credit, some courses are full credit, and essentially students complete 5 credits a year, which is why it's 4 years. And then each program has different types. So you could end up as a specialist, where you've got more than half of your credits essentially taken on one subject or academic area. You could major in something, which is about 6 to 8 credits, and then the remaining 12 to 14 credits is kind of shared out with other subjects. And then another definition is the minor, where I suppose it's the smallest type of kind of credit that you can get, or sorry, not qualification, I don't know the right word, but the term that you can get where you achieve about 4 credits for that subject area. And what you must do essentially is have a combination of those. You might end up as just a specialist in one area, so you have those 10 to 14 credits, and the remaining 6 to 10 is shared out across other subjects. You might have 2 majors, or you might have 1 major and 2 minors. And essentially, that's really interesting and really exciting, because you can shape that along your journey, and you might find that you really like something and you want to pursue that further. Or alternatively, you might find that you've had your heart set on something, and as you're going through it, you realize actually it's something else. And I think that's really, really nice to keep in mind, actually, because I'm sure lots of parents here are going to be saying that, you know, might reflect on their journey and maybe highlight the fact that their journey wasn't necessarily linear. They didn't necessarily start and decide they're going to do one thing and stick to it. You know, along the way, they might have changed course or trajectory, just like I did as well, having a degree in chemistry and then ending up as a maths teacher. They're two very, they're similar pathways, but not necessarily what you'd expect. So yeah, the university, there's about 125 universities, including the private and the public. The majority of the universities are in Ontario, and then there's others kind of spread out. Top 3 being McGill, University of Toronto, and the University of British Columbia. I suppose the procedure for admissions, it does vary between institutions. A lot of the time you have to kind of apply to the university via the website, unless you're applying to a university in Ontario. Now, Ontario having the most kind of universities, they have a system which is called the OUAC, which is the Ontario University Application Center, I think it is. And essentially it's similar to UCAS or Common App, which is where you have one website where you can apply to those universities in Ontario. The documents that you'll need, essentially your high school transcripts, which are, I suppose, your reports going along, showing your journey. They essentially what they want to see is a mid-year grade and an end-of-year grade over a couple of years. So what's nice is our school reports have kind of 3 data points. So it's really nice to be able to see the journey of you and the grades that you're achieving along the way. They want to know about the school profile, which is something that the school will provide to them, talk about the context of our school, the curriculum, what we have on offer. They'll also want maybe some other things like a portfolio or an interview. They'll sometimes want letters of recommendation, which we're always happy to kind of put forward. And similar to other university systems, there are early admissions available, which is definitely worth considering, especially because sometimes the probability of getting an offer is sometimes increased by doing that early application. So definitely worth kind of looking into whether that's a choice for you. There are some universities that have rolling admissions, and essentially what a rolling admission is something that's all across the year that the universities are available for and taking in applications and giving out offers. It's nice to have that as a reassurance, but it's better to apply early, especially because you need to think about other things like the travel, accommodation, visas potentially, and also it might be in line with other university systems that you're applying to. So you want to make sure that you have all of your offers in a similar timeline so that you can make that decision appropriately. Okay, so the application documents. So there's application forms. Often the university has a centralized kind of application form. It is important to kind of research and just check with the university via the website. They have all of the information there. And they'll have the specifics about the degree that you're applying to and what information they'll want. So the forms will ask for that personal data. There will be a written component, even if you're going through the OUAC. Even if they don't ask for necessarily those specific details like a personal statement or an essay question, the university might reach out to you after and say, well, we'd like to for the student or the candidate to submit this. Sometimes there is admissions testing like the IELTS in some cases, but it's not often. Most of the courses are taught in English, but if there's there are a few universities that require that. So again, important to just check in. I don't suppose that anyone here tonight would have any issues with that. So yeah, I spoke about the supporting documents. They also sometimes want predicted grades, so it's important to maintain those grades over the years in school, because the predicted grades come from our internal assessments. And we do kind of rely on that as well as the teacher assessment, but it's what students are able to demonstrate on paper, which prevails when we are giving those predicted grades. Letters of recommendation and reference letters as well. If you do need that, it's important to give us as much notice as possible. Give us some context. Think about the things that you want us to talk about. It's really helpful, and the more time that the student or the family invests in that, in terms of guiding the recommender, the better the letter comes out in the end. So it's definitely directly proportional there. So in terms of transcripts, I suppose the grades are the most important thing that universities look at, not just in Canada, but all over the world. And what they're looking at when they're looking at a transcript is they're looking at patterns. They want to see if grades are consistently high, or if they're increasing, or on the flip side, if they're decreasing. And they'll use that to gain an idea about the context of that student, to see what they're about in terms of their academic progress. They like seeing consistency, as anyone would. You know, if you're going to be taking someone on board in your company, you want to make sure that they're as consistent as possible. They do want to find out about your journey and your story. So that's something that stands out. That's similar to the US university systems, where it's not just about the grades, but it's important to get a story along the way from that transcript. And they often want it from year 10. So if you weren't here since year 10, you might need to get that transfer transcript from the university or the school that you came from. And that's sometimes very difficult. So it's important to get that as in advance as possible. Essentially, you'll need to get that transcript from your previous school, and the school will do it on letterhead paper. They'll stamp it and sign it. And then wherever we took over, we'd kind of do the same thing, have a transcript with the DBSJP logo, and our exams officer would sign it and stamp it with the DBSJP stamp, and we'd send that all together as one document. Essentially, we want to make sure that the student is in the best position to get a successful offer. So if we have everything together, it makes it easier for the advisor to see and make their judgments. Predicted grades, again, it's something that comes from us. It's on letterhead paper. We will just give essentially the subject, the grade that we're predicting for the student at the end of their 2 years for each of those subjects. So as I said, you're going to apply directly to the university specifically in most cases, unless you're going through the Ontario OUAC. You might apply directly to the program. So you might go to the School of Mathematics or the Faculty of Chemistry or whatever that might be. Or you might look at the broader faculty, which is maybe overarching over various subjects like the liberal arts or the Faculty of Science. And you might be expected to declare what you intend to major in. That doesn't mean it's necessarily set in stone, but it is something that they like to know, that you've got some sort of a direction in mind. Most universities allow you to apply for 2 programs or faculties in the same kind of institute, and you'll get separate offers for both of those if that's what you're interested in. And I suppose after you apply, you'll receive an email with a personal student number, and that's important to keep a hold of, because you'll use that for all kind of following correspondence. Applications deadlines obviously vary by university. but essentially you will be applying in year 13. The normal date, which is in line with kind of the UK and the UCAS, is in January, and that's the kind of the decision date for regular applications. There are scholarships and financial assistance available, depending on if you're a resident or even actually if you're international. But you need to be proactive with that and make sure that you apply early and make sure that you've kind of filled in all the appropriate forms. Essentially, after you've applied, there are 3 or 4 main responses. It's either denied, you've got an offer, you're on the wait list, or a deferral, depending on where you're up to. You might have certain commitments that you might need to kind of uphold before you go on to that course. And the responses are generally between February to April, sometimes later, depending on the competitiveness or the university itself. So applicants are, I suppose, mainly evaluated on their academic achievements. The grades obviously make a big influence in that. If you have to do any entrance exams, that's also important to kind of consider. And if you've not been in an English-speaking school, then obviously that's even more of a consideration. So in terms of the admissions overview, so A-levels are definitely well recognized. If you're studying BTECs, they are recognized in some institutions, but it's important to check because it's better to be, I suppose, preemptive than reactive, I suppose. As I mentioned a few times, academic performance is the main criteria. It's important to have that box ticked, so aiming for the best grades possible, because when it is down to crunch time and it is a competitive university, that's the first thing that universities tend to look at. As I said, it still is a holistic approach, so they do want to look at the other aspects, but it's mainly, that's the first thing, so you want to make sure that that's on point. They do like to see extracurricular involvement, so being an active member of the community. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do specific societies or ECAs. It might be just the time that you spend with family, or if you have a part-time job, which is probably difficult around here. The roles and responsibilities that you have at home, and maybe student leadership as well. So any kind of involvement in the community is really important. Universities love to see a student who's not just looking at their academic kind of progression, but their progression in terms of maturity as well. I suppose it's the quality of involvement as well. So it's not just what they're doing; it's what they've learned from it, what the impact is of their kind of their involvement. There are sometimes the general essays or the supplemental essays, which is a great opportunity for students to show who they are, to kind of show what separates them from other candidates. So it's a great opportunity to have an interview without being in that room and giving those interview answers. There are lots of opportunities as well. Sometimes universities ask for a letter of recommendation, and that can come from myself or even our careers advisor. And again, it's just important to be as preemptive as possible. Give us as much information about that. Choose teachers who know you well. Don't choose too many teachers. Choose 1 or 2 because you want that quality. That's more important. Give some notice as well. I suppose there are some individual factors as well. If you're talented in a sport, or if you have some various achievements or musical talents or performing arts, it's important to kind of see if that's a factor that might help with your eligibility, and as well as your character, of course. So the written components, I suppose there's the personal statement, there's the essay question, and then there's the letter of recommendation. I know I've spoken about that already, but they are essentially the other aspects that really kind of show the individual side of a student. There might be lots of candidates who have similar grades, but sometimes what separates them is their what people say about them and what they say about themselves. So yeah, your portfolio. It's important to make sure that you spread your applications out, which is something that I've mentioned before with other universities as well, other systems. You don't want to go for all of the aspirational universities, and you don't equally, on the flip side, want to go for all of the easy, kind of not easy, but safety applications. You want to make sure that you've kind of spread that around so that you can make sure that you've got a higher chance of getting those offers, but at the same time, you have the opportunity to get onto some of those aspirational courses. Tuition and financial aid. So tuition is available for in-province if you're a citizen, or actually for international aid, the prices vary depending on what your status is. There is financial aid available if you're a citizen or even if you're international, and it's just important to do that research along the way. There are scholarships available, and I know that when we had a recent University of Toronto session with some of our students, I think even Yusuf was part of it, they spoke about a scholarship. I suppose the main reasons are essentially three factors: merit, need, or specialized. It generally be need or specialized, which is probably what our students would be going for. Some universities have automatic entrance scholarships just because they like the applicants so much. There are some additional ones. There might be kind of other factors, and there might be separate applications. And again, that's useful to kind of just research in terms of the university itself. There's a couple of websites at the bottom there if you want to do a bit more research in terms of scholarships. So Unifrog is probably the best place to kind of do some research in the initial stages, and actually it does go on to kind of come back to in terms of shortlisting. You can look at universities, you can look at not just the courses that are on offer, but the university itself, what life is like, and the other things that come along with university kind of decisions. You can find out the entry requirements. It will give you support for your essay questions and kind of letter of recommendation kind of factors. And something I mentioned before is, which I really like about Unifrog, is it focuses on competencies, which are the skills that are transferable, that not necessarily are specific to a subject, but it's looking at how you can demonstrate that you have certain competencies like organization or leadership or various other things to consider. In terms of studying in Canada, yeah, there's a study permit application if you're not a citizen. So once you get your offer, then you have to apply for the study permit. The university doesn't have a say in that. They don't have any input in that. It's essentially a separate entity. So it takes about 4 to 6 weeks. So you want to make sure that you're doing that in advance to make sure that you're in the best place. And that, I believe, brings me to the end of the session.